take more risk, bigger risks. It's crazy how human nature hasn't changed. We still all fall into the same traps we always have.
From cornfields to high-rises, office to industrial, houses to hotels, and every other asset class in real estate, we cover the people, the projects, and the profit. Welcome to the Investing in Iowa show. This show is for go-doers, action takers, and business owners. It's for people like you who are sick of Uncle Sam taking a huge bite of your apple. If you're looking to get ahead of what's taking place in Iowa, learn who is doing what, and how you can get in on the action, you're in the right place. Hosted by Neil Timmins, an Iowa native who has been involved in over $300 million in real estate right here in Iowa. Recording in studio from West Des Moines. Here's your host, Neil Timmins.
Got Mark Hildreth here on the show. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm excited you're here. So for the audience to say, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Mark Hildreth from Des Moines, Iowa, specifically Norwalk. General contractor and also own a residential light commercial wood framing company.
We had a lot to unpack today between those two because I don't know what the last one is. Take me back to, did you grow up in Norwalk? Is that where
Yep.
life began in your world?
Yeah, probably third generation. Grew up in Norwalk. Both parents did. I graduated from Norwalk. Started working for my dad's construction company, residential. That's the wood framing company. Started working for him around 99, 2000. Started the main company that I participate in most today is the general contracting. Bought a lot, and I was just talking about this the other day. I bought a lot. Couldn't believe how easy it was to get a loan from the bank.
Back in 99?
Yeah. Put a house on it, and it sold before I had the first floor done. Bought the next lot. It sold before we had it sheetrocked. That next summer, I think I had a spec home and then 4 customs. And I was like, wow, I'm a home builder and I'm doing this on the side. It was a side hustle still. Things were going great. I realized a few years later that doing all the work myself, the sweat equity, I was definitely the lowest price contractor. Obviously, that's why I was getting the work. But I was working 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
I was doing the tile. I was cleaning the yards, grading, and it was all on the side.
Yeah.
So then I don't fast forward, probably 2006, got in with some architects through the carpentry side, and honestly kind of stumbled into the historic restoration through some local architects I think that first bigger historic job was Hotel Greenfield. I think it was it was a pretty neat structure how the community got behind it, sold shares. And so that project. And then we started doing some Jimmy John's, met a developer down in the East Village, doing some work down there. And really, I would say when the crash hit, I feel it was hit Iowa, or me specifically more in Moines. I was very fortunate to have the commercial end of back stop. And I'd say that was really the bigger transition. Today, we do very little, if any, residential, focus all on commercial. I would say 50% is probably of a historic nature. So that's working with developers that are going after the historic tax credits, state and federal. And it depends on the year, 40% could be anything from retail build-outs, bars, restaurants, salons, law firms, whatnot. And I still have the residential light commercial wood framing company. I think we got about a dozen guys. We do work for any of our wood carpentry work, and then do work for other builders throughout the Des Moines Metro.
At the end of the day, what had you really pivot out of the residential side?
Well, the residential is difficult dealing with the emotions that you get from homeowners. And that was probably maybe the negative side, but what I really liked on the commercial side is the structure. I mean, you're dealing with architects, it's professional, having a set of plans. There's I thought I was getting this countertop, or I thought I was getting that. It's spec'd out. It's certainly cleaner from that aspect. And it's easier to scale also.
Easier to scale. I would imagine easier to forecast revenue and then income as a result of the fact that it's really heavily structured.
Yeah, it is. And, specifically, we do very little hard bid. Most of our work is negotiated.
Right, so explain those differences for the lay person out there who does not understand either one of those terms.
So generally hard bid would be you'd see it in public work, maybe your schools, your cities, municipalities there. I believe there's some regulations that they have to have multiple bids. The plans are completely taken to a construction set. Every detail spec book, generally there's 200-page spec book that comes along with those. And then the bids are all released, opened up on the same day. Require some bonding, generally, depending on the size of the project. And then it's low bid. Most of the time it goes to low bid. The negotiated work that we generally thrive at, we're meeting with the operator, that whether that's somebody, the restaurant bar owner or the developer, they have an idea, looking for budgets. Will this idea work? And sometimes they have an architect, sometimes they don't. Well, we can help with that. And we're working with them along the way to see if it works. The disadvantage of some of the hard bid is the plans are completely done. They've spent all the money on that. Right. Then it goes to bid and it's more than what they can afford or finance. Right. And so then you start basically all that money was wasted. So the negotiated part is usually we're in early on to help guide the project to meet the budget.
Yeah, and then it sounds like, and if it's not going to, you can at least flush it out pretty quick without that, whoever that's leading that charge, the owner, if you will, without them being too much out in terms of dollars and time.
Yeah. Yep. We get into, a lot of projects, you hear the VE, value engineering. That's a lot of times got to do that to get the project within budget. And it's a lot easier to do that starting out, so when we can go to our trade partners and, hey, are you still tracking? The last 3 projects we did, the heating cooling was $12,000 a unit. Still, I'd bump it up to, we got a tariff increase this, so I'd bump that up another 15%. And so we're tracking that as the project's being designed to say, okay, maybe we got to cut back on certain items.
Yeah. So we're talking about both things: the renovation, the historic renovation side of things, and then also the the kind of the more build out components to get that to a spot for somebody to go operate their business.
Hey, Iowa investors, this is Ava Bautkamp, Chief of Staff at Legacy Impact Investors. Have you thought about adding real estate to your portfolio but don't have the time or desire to play landlord? At Legacy Impact Investors, we do the heavy lifting. Our team finds the deals, manages the properties, and handles all the day-to-day operations. Our select group of qualified investors co-invest with us, gaining ownership equity without opening a tenant email or responding to a maintenance call. They just share in the income, appreciation, and tax benefits. These opportunities aren't for everyone. They are for qualified, accredited investors only. If you want to learn more, please visit legacyimpactinvestors.com to apply.
So let's start with the historic renovations. Maybe from at a high level, what is that? And then I want to get into the kind of the weeds of the investors and the kind of things that get a project to work and where you've seen it work. So at a high level, tell me a little about that.
So when a developer owner is going after or pursuing historic tax credits, specifically in Iowa, state and federal, they're fairly substantial. But to meet that criteria, the National Parks has forget what it's called, but there is basically a large book of everything you have to do down to specifically the mortar. You have to have the mortar tested and you have to make sure that mortar matches what was put in that building. Everything from windows, it's very complicated in how you meet their criteria. We've done it enough. We kind of take it as second nature. We're like, we just assume these things because we've learned the hard way a few times. One thing that pops up a lot, a home or a owner operator, they'll be, I love this brick. I want to expose this brick in this restaurant. Generally, you can't expose that brick. It has to be plastered. No. The plaster's falling all down. It's like, no, that's got to be covered back up because you pick a period of significance. Generally, their developers are working with a historian, architect, and they're picking the time that building is going to be put back. So it's not just, it's an old brick building.
Let's do all these things that make it to today's design, maybe, but you've got to bring it back to a specific time period to be able to do that. And the reason people do this, correct me if I'm wrong, the tax credits are what make this whole thing go. Without the tax credits, nobody's doing historic renovation.
Correct. Yeah. The preservationist. Yeah. It's not. A lot of them do have a passion for preserving old buildings.
Absolutely.
But the bottom line is, we wouldn't put it back. We would not. We've had projects where you have to keep the original double hung windows. And it's more expensive for us to pull every window apart, scrape the glazing, repaint it, whether we're hooking up the counterweights. It's more than a brand new window and it's still leaky, and it is frustrating for a developer to see, like, why am I building this project out and having old wood windows that I've still got to paint and maintain? Right. Well, I think just loosely, it's a 46% of QREs, qualified reimbursements, that the developer gets back in different ways. So that's a lot of money.
Materially significant.
Yeah. It's not for everyone, but there's certain projects that it well, it makes the project or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a number of people out there. I mean, this is their wheelhouse. As an investor is what I'm thinking of. This is their wheelhouse. That's their specialty. They execute on this at a very high level. I'm curious, when you've seen those investors, what are the types of things they're doing where they get it right? When you see it go the other way, where somebody screw this whole thing up, they're going, it just doesn't make sense at an investment level. They're going to be one project in and they're not coming and trying this again.
I think it's getting the right tenant. You see some that just assume this building's going to be great for a restaurant. Well, there's no parking.
Sure.
And it's like, well, the restaurant would fit great. I could just picture it. I was in a place like this in St. Louis or Chicago. Right. And, there's a lot of other factors that, kind of come in. A lot of the successful developers, before due diligence is done, they're lining up tenants. They're already courting people to come in. And that's kind of a niche where we'll get the shell contract and then it rolls into the TIs. And so we do TIs that may not be a building that we worked in, but that's where, the restaurant, the bars, the law firms kind of rolls in. So getting that right fit with the tenants and some of the historic projects we've done are in their apartments. So, and that's another one, understanding what problem with some of those older buildings is that they're small. They're not the desirable buildings, unless it's like a warehouse complete redone. But if you're looking to restore an original apartment, well, you got a 3-foot wide kitchen. There's no laundry. So how do you put a laundry in there? And all of a sudden you got a 400 square foot studio that you're sticking a washer dryer in. So the developers that are really thinking that through, where the common areas and how they can utilize that, I think are the ones that really seem to be successful and are repeat clients.
Yeah. The TIs, that really rolls into the next piece, is what you do, whether it's TIs for something you're on or, you get called in after the fact. Walk me through that process. You're working with somebody who owns a business and they have a vision and they want it to look like it. Ultimately, it's up to you to help execute that vision.
Yeah. So we get, I would say, people at all different stages. We may get a client that comes from an architect or the bank, so they're all, you can kind of tell what that client's focus on. If we're getting a client from an architect, that the visual aesthetics is the top priority. And then generally those are ones that sometimes lead to, we have to work a little harder to get it within budget, because that's maybe secondary. And then there's the ones that, maybe a referral from the bank, and they're dialed in on that number. They know exactly what they want to spend. And then there's others that we get introduced maybe from a broker that works well because we can at least give them comparables, have a meeting, understand what they're looking for, and say, well, again, here's a architect that would fit what you're looking for. Generally, the broker's working on their financing or helping them from that side. But again, getting in early and helping them understand the cost and what they can do within their limitations. Specifically with historic, sometimes that really, there's some constraints on what they can do in a space. They might see the space and, I want to do this, and this. Yeah. There can be constraints.
Is there a project, over the course of the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years that really sticks out in your mind that you can share? To go, this is one that we did, really came together nicely. Maybe something out there that the public would even, may have heard about or know about on the historic side.
Yeah. So something somewhat recently was the Ballroom.
Oh, sure.
That was a very fun project. We were in early on, set budgets, blew that budget. That was one where we came in and walked it, and we didn't really have comparables for a ballroom. No. We hadn't done one in the past, but we were able to put some, what I felt was pretty good numbers. And specifically with that, we got into some complexities of the city of West Des Moines was concerned with the noise that was coming out of the building for shows. It was really, the way it echoed, it was crazy. Well, the building was just a 10 metal building. It was literally like 1.5 inches of fiberglass insulation and a couple layers of 10. And so the owner, he lived in the neighborhood and he was really concerned about stopping the noise. And so got an audio engineer out of Austin, the structural engineer, and it was like, okay, well, add 2 layers of sheetrock on the bottom, 2 layers of sheetrock on the top, fill it full of insulation. Good. All right, well, that's easy. Here's the price for that. Structural engineer's like, well, yeah, the roof can't hold that. So we got to reinforce it. I'm like, here's what we do. We'll just put a roof over the existing roof. All right, yeah, here's a rough price for that. Historian comes in. Oh, you can't change the elevation of the roof that much. That's going to go around. And it's like, okay, well, let's build a roof underneath the roof. Okay, well, here's some budgets for that. Got the mechanical contractor involved. Said, all right, well, here's the ducting. We're going to have to lower that original ceiling. historians like, no, you can't lower that. That ceiling has to be right where it's at now. And so it was very complicated on that, just specifically with that roof, and how we had to rebuild the roof within that same structure. And obviously opening up a roof with a historic ballroom floor was we're swinging, I think, 3,200-pound beams to weld on top of the existing structure to reinforce it, welding or lifts and cranes over a historic ballroom floor in Iowa when we got, rain or snow. Yeah. That was a challenging time.
What an incredible project. I mean, at the end of the day, I've been in it pre and post. Beautiful building. That's just been great. Sounds great.
Yeah, that's definitely one it's fun to go to and, take friends and family to. Again, it was just a great project. The owner, I consider a good friend, and it was the good team all around. So,
well, I mean, it certainly stands out. You said, hey, we haven't done a ballroom before. I can't think of another one that exists in the city.
Not in Iowa. It is kind of funny. Tom Archer, the guy that built that, did have maybe 6 or 8 around the Midwest.
Really? Okay.
Now, obviously, the Surf Ballroom was one in Iowa that was a historic restoration. The historian that we work with, she was I believe, the lead historian on that project too. So, but yeah, I think that was one that I think they did close on the tax credits. I believe it was seems to be a successful project.
Well, I mean, it's a good example that probably so many of us, or all of us here in Central Iowa, certainly know that property. And without the historic renovation, without those tax credits, that project probably does not occur.
No,
right? I mean, it just doesn't happen.
No, it would have been.
All of a sudden, that thing gets, it's on the docket. It gets scraped. Who knows what else goes in there, right?
Yeah, it would have been, and I think that's without the historic tax credits, it would have been a piece of land with a burden of demoing a building. There was a lot of deferred maintenance on that building too throughout the years.
If you're a house flipper, execute the burst strategy or do double closings and are in need of money, Little Guy Loans is your go-to lender here in the Des Moines area. Time is money. Loan approvals in 24 hours. Closings in 5 days. Little Guy Loans was founded by Neil Timmins, an investor just like you. Since he has been in over 10,000 homes in Des Moines, there's never an appraisal. Houses, multifamily, and commercial property loans up to $1 million. Check out www.littleguyloans.com.
Talk to me, interest rates went up like overnight, right? A couple of years ago, the darn thing doubles. It dramatically has impacted construction as a whole across this entire country. What's your world look like? What have you seen here through Iowa? How's it impact, you guys specifically?
Yeah, a lot of our projects have been, they're pretty slow rolling. Projects that we expected to go are kind of sitting on the back burner. They start to change. Developers generally will engage the architect more, take the design a little further, ask us to update the plans. I mean, a lot of repricing it, priced the project up, which was just an exterior restoration. And then there was like, let's update these offices, and let's update 3 floors of offices. And now we're back. Let's gut the whole thing and go 3 floors of apartments. We're doing a lot of pricing exercises, trying to get office spaces, regardless of interest rates. That's not real strong right now. So we are doing a lot of work, pre-con work, trying to get numbers to work, or trying to get numbers for the developer to see if it'll work. And I think it's going to go where I feel, I was saying that last year, I think we've got a lot of projects on the docket, just they're not pulling the trigger quite yet. But this is where we're looking, at doing more hard bid work. There is still there's a lot of funding to schools and municipalities, but it's just a different game for us that we don't have the experience at. But it's a good way to subsidize our work when you do have.
Well, there's delivering things to the marketplace, in the form of space for lease, for sale, whatever it may be. It's an imperfect science, right? You can't time these things out because, you go start a project today, you're 12 to 24 months out to deliver that space for lease, right? Either on a spec or on a custom standpoint. It's interesting to have these conversations because in the back of my mind, I'm going, when does some of that spec construction start picking up on the commercial side? Whatever it may be, whether it's retail, industrial, doesn't really matter. When does that really start to pick up? Because a lot of what you said seems to be commonplace in the commercial construction world. Is just it's an exercise of bidding. But I'm with you. It seems like this should be the year, right? There's greater stability in interest rates. You might not like the rate, but there's greater stability in the rate than what there was, over the course of the last 24 months to go. Where does it end? Who knows? It seems like, okay,
It seems to be some stabilization. And we're seeing that with our subcontract. We get asked a lot, like, what are you seeing prices come down? No. I mean, we saw, through COVID, stuff just shot through the roof and it didn't even make sense. And everybody expected that to return back to pre-COVID cost.
Right.
It did. Some of it's come down.
Yeah.
It's far more stable the last, for sure, 2 years for our subcontractors. So that's beneficial. And again, I think interest rates seem to be stable.
Yeah.
But, interesting, we're really looking, we use this term boutique developers, or we're a boutique contractor. We're looking for those one-offs. And so it's interesting where the cities want to see some development and where they incentivize. So the historic end that we tend to chase, there are, City of Des Moines and the other small communities. They've got the town squares with some older buildings. So those are the markets that we're going after, that maybe the developers, there's a backstop maybe with some city backing, and other items that maybe help the higher interest rates. So
no doubt, risk reduction from a developer standpoint, when you're facing uncertainty, it helps a lot to get those things moving forward.
And those are the developers that are creative, finding those tenants. It's not just rinse and repeat cookie cutter type projects, which nothing against those. It's just something that we don't focus on.
Right. What are you most excited about this year?
Summer right now.
It's been a crazy winter.
We're really, we're looking at scaling, growing the company, adding some staff.
Yeah.
So I think some new hires, growing, expansion, growing our market share, I think is probably what we're really looking forward to. And be really interesting to see what the labor market does to our carpentry side. Been very difficult. Skilled labor is tough. And it's just trying to get that balance of skilled labor, and curious where that's going to go. But I think that's another market that we're focused a little bit more on, is maybe bring on more labor, skilled labor.
Tell me about that wood framing side of your business.
Yeah, I mean, that was a company my dad started in 1983, roughly 8 years ago. My brother and I bought it from him. We worked together for at least 5 years and decided that we had a little different business philosophies towards it. So we've split. Most people think it's still the same company. Yeah. He kind of does his thing and I do mine. Yeah. But we do wood framing. So a lot of custom additions, remodels, South of Grand area. Okay. We're really trying to get a niche in mass timber. There's a couple developers that are focusing on mass timber. I think it's a really cool construction. It's really cool. I think, again, can't speak for the developers, but I think it's hard to get the numbers to work all the time just because of cost. But it's a sustainable way to build. You see it in some of the bigger cities. That's one of the things that our carpentry crew does, is the mass timber. We've done 2 project in Valley Junction and a project off Ingersoll. And I think there's another one of those coming around the corner. Hope to be a part of that. Yeah. But that's something to look forward to, some of those type of developments. Yeah, those are cool. I mean, I would imagine from your standpoint, it's cool to be able to do some new things. And maybe that's also what turns you on a little bit about the historic side, is that everything, you get to think when you go to work, you're forced to think and have to come up with solutions and help achieve a common goal, is deliver a project from an investor standpoint to the market at numbers that work. Yep. We got to show value constantly and get creative. It's not just, as much as I like to focus on processes, but you do have to be creative, everyone on the team. And You ready for the final 3 questions? If you had one piece of advice for your 20-year-old self, what would it be? Take more risk, bigger risks. Elaborate. How would that have manifested in your life? Well, I think back of the first big hire I made, and I kicked myself. It was just me for probably 8 to 10 years. And that first key hire, that was changed the trajectory. Probably scary at the time, though. Oh, yeah. I laugh at it now. Yeah, right. 2 books that changed your life. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Had a teacher in high school that made us read that. I thought it was a waste of time. Thought it was fake at the time. But I would say in my early 20s, I realized what was holding me back were some of those techniques. So yeah, I think Dale Carnegie was a good one. Still refer back to some of his, it's a little golden book or something like that that's got some of the cliff notes. Yeah. Let's see, second book. The one that I really just kind of started thinking back was Russ Roberts, How Adam Smith Can Change Your Life. So Adam Smith is a Scottish economic philosopher. It's crazy how human nature hasn't changed. We still all fall into the same traps we always have. Well, that's an amazing recommendation. No one has ever said that. So I'm excited to pull that myself and read it.
If you were cast away on an island for a year, you could only get 3 pieces of data about your business each and every month. What 3 things must you know to know how your business is run?
Well, each company has a dashboard, and that's something it's all there. So, I mean, that is invoices out, basically accounts receivable, percentage of profit on each job. Yeah. So that's probably the key one is how much we have out and where are we tracking to hit our margins. And the carpentry side really focus on labor hours and data. And it's every, why did this job take 24 more hours than this job? Sometimes it's because they clocked into the wrong job, but it is tracking the hours on that is and the square foot to hours is a key.
Yeah. How do you operate your dashboards? I'm curious, like what technology?
It's old school Excel. So office manager, she's a rock star.
Yeah.
She once a week pulls the data from QuickBooks and puts it. So yeah, every job has, job cost to date, any invoices, pay-ups that were sent out, track that, falls into a graph. Like specifically on the carpentry side, I've got graphs from the last 4 years of hours worked per week. You can see, it's kind of funny to see how the winter it drops down and why it peaks at certain times. I mean, definitely makes sense in the winter, but Excel graphs and
Mark, I've asked lots of questions. What's one question I did not ask that I should have asked?
Oh, that's a good one. What would I do if I wasn't in construction?
Yeah. You're born in Norwalk. Dad wasn't in the construction. You didn't get that tutelage from a young age. You ended up with a different type of tutelage. What would you be doing?
So, it would have been around 2008. Financially, was doing okay. Wasn't leveraged a lot. So, but things were just, it just stopped. It was a crazy time.
Yeah.
I feel dating myself, but people who hadn't gone through 08 is something. And fortunately, I wasn't leveraged. I wasn't worried about bankruptcy, but just wasn't something to do. I was into beer brewing was becoming popular. Yeah. And I remember friends were like, "Oh, you make such good beer. You need to start a brewery." And, oh, that would be awesome. I almost went to brewing school, the Siebel Institute. There was a point where I was really close to pulling trigger and going to school to be a brewer. It is kind of fortunate that the Greenfield project took off at that same time, and it was, I haven't looked back.
Yeah. Do you still brew today?
I don't. I would if I could. It's time consuming. It is fun. It's kind of, it's technical. Yeah. I enjoy that part of geeking out, but no, I haven't done that probably 5-6 years.
Yeah, maybe something to circle back to.
Retirement.
For people who want to find you, follow you, connect with you, where can they go? What should they do?
For company-wise, Facebook, I'm sure Instagram, LinkedIn, our website, hildrethconstruction.com. And that's probably our easiest way, hildrethconstruction.com and our website.
Links below in the show notes for anybody who wants to connect. Mark, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying the show, may I ask a favor of you? Naturally, subscribe so you never miss an episode. But would you rate and leave an honest written review on Apple Podcasts? It does a lot for us here at the show, and I appreciate reading your thoughts. Great guests make for a great show. If you know of another Iowan who would be a great guest, or you yourself have interest in being a guest, well, get on our radar. Visit Investing in Iowa to fill out an application or recommend a guest. And if you want to connect with me one-on-one, go to LegacyImpactInvestors.com. Click on the Invest With Us button in the top right corner, and there you can pick a time for the two of us to get on the calendar and connect. Until next time, keep investing in Iowa.